Oh, hi there, friends. I think I can speak for everyone when I say,
they're making what?
Game Freak, as of yesterday, has announced a DLC Season Pass for Pokemon Sword and Shield. For a company that doesn't even regularly patch their games, the fact that they're supporting Sword and Shield with additional DLC is nothing shy of shocking. However, this has stirred up a bit of controversy in the community, and I just wanted to get a video out here on my full opinions and hopefully answer the question, is the Pokemon DLC a good thing? I figure we should start with what we're actually getting in this DLC pack and go from there. The Pokemon DLC is coming in 2 chunks of content for $30 total, with the first part, the Isle of Armor, releasing in June, and the second part, the Crown Tundra, releasing in November. These DLC packs will include new Pokemon, mostly seeming to be new Gigantamax Pokemon, new Galar forms, and at least a few brand new legendaries. However, we're also getting another 200 Pokemon from past games, such as Volcarona, Garchomp, Landorus, and Heatran, just to name a few to upset those of you who play competitively. Both of these DLC packs take place in 2 brand new parts of Galar, which are completely in the style of the wild area, effectively making 2 new wild areas that will house the story of the expansions. Both of these chunks of DLC will each have their own story mode as well, but we don't quite know how long they're going to be yet. In addition, I'd also like to draw attention to the fact that the games are getting patched, so that even if you don't buy the expansion yourself, you can still obtain and use these new Pokemon if you trade or bring them in from Pokemon Home. Now that we know what's going to be in these DLC packs, I'd like to make some comparisons to the way Game Freak has done things in the past. Historically, we would usually get a third, or in the case of Generations 5 and 7, 2 additional games with some improvements for another $40. This time, however, we have the base game for $60 and the expansion for $30. You could make the argument that we're still paying more for the same amount of content, but I really do think that in this case we're getting way more than we would with the older way of doing things and at a lower price too. I'd also like to make the point that the enhanced versions in the past were nothing more than the base game you already owned plus a couple hours of extra content. However, these DLC packs are entirely new experiences. The thing that excites me the most, however, is that you don't have to buy these expansion passes to get the Pokemon included in the expansions. For the brand new Pokemon being introduced with these expansion passes, you can still trade with other players regardless of whether or not they have the pass. So if they're willing to trade you the new Pokemon, you can still obtain them without paying anything. As for the older Pokemon, which are getting reintroduced with these expansion passes, the base game is getting patched to support these Pokemon, so you can bring them in through Pokemon Home without catching them yourself. This single fact alone means that these expansion passes are at least a step in the right direction. Game Freak is taking the biggest complaint and the biggest controversy there ever was about Pokemon, and they're doing something about it. And not only are they doing something about it, they're basically doing it for free, with all of the controversy of Dexit, Sword and Shield being bare bones, and that the technical side of things being nothing shy of embarrassing. This is the one thing that tells me, hey, we're trying. If they were really only out there to take our money and make us pay for content that they cut just to sell us later, they wouldn't have backported the inclusion of these new and old Pokemon. But because it's not required for you to purchase these expansions, they're in a way giving us content that we should have had at the beginning for free. While this shouldn't be a huge victory, the fact that they could have charged for this functionality but didn't says that they're doing their best to do right by the players. In the past, Game Freak would have released a third or enhanced version after the fact about a year later for the exact same price as the base game, leaving us all to pay for the same game twice. I still completely understand those of you that say this is still a cash grab though. I would agree with you in the fact that some of this content should have been in the base game to begin with. Sword and Shield released with a very stripped down Pokemon experience with so little to do outside of the main story that it's honestly embarrassing. The amount of content in the base Sword and Shield experience at launch was hardly more than what we had in Red and Blue. However, these expansion passes are half the price of the base game, and Game Freak has even stated that they won't be making these enhanced versions anymore. They're going to supplement the game's post-release with additional optional content. Keep in mind that I don't think this means that we should be expecting less from Game Freak. Pokemon Sword and Shield released with far less content than is to be fairly expected from a $95 billion franchise. Some of you may even argue that the $30 price tag is steep, and honestly at this point I can't agree or disagree with that. But this DLC pack isn't about the ones and the zeros and the profits, it's about the fact that Game Freak is making a change in the way they do things. We no longer have to be wary of an enhanced version of the game a year later with barely any extra content. This shows us that Game Freak is willing to just sell us the new parts at a much more reasonable price. This also shows us that Game Freak isn't expecting us to pay for old content. With the fact that we can bring in the older Pokemon from home and trade for the new ones, we're still able to experience for free the best part of Pokemon, the Pokemon. So, is the Pokemon DLC a good thing? Yes, absolutely. Players who choose to purchase the DLC no longer have to buy and play through the entire game again at full price just to get to the extra goodies. Players who choose not to purchase the DLC are still getting some improvements and updates for free. And most importantly, Game Freak has shown that they're no longer content with selling us the same game again with 2 extra hours of content. Whether you think that the DLC is worth it or not, and whether you think that this content should have been in the base game, I think we can all agree that this is better than reselling us the full game again in a year. But be sure to leave a comment below with your thoughts, or if you have any counterpoints. I'd love to discuss with all of you. And also, look at these birds! They're so cool!